acceptable in your sight, for you are our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Sometimes we refuse to believe what's right in front of our face. We just won't accept it. We refuse to believe the reality that exists. I received a story from one of our church members this week, and it's an interesting, humorous entree into the fact that it has to be proven to us. I have a story about a duck. A woman brought a very limp duck to the veterinarian. As she laid her pet on the table, the vet pulled out his stethoscope and listened to the bird's chest. After a moment or two, the vet shook his head and sadly said, "I'm sorry, your duck, Cuddles, has passed away." The distressed woman wailed, "Are you sure?" "Yes, I'm sure. Your duck is dead." "How can you be so sure? I mean, you haven't done any testing on him or anything. He might just be in a coma or something." The vet rolled his eyes, turned around, and left the room. He returned a few minutes later with a black Labrador retriever. As the duck's owner looked on in amazement, the dog stood on his hind legs, put his front paws on the examination table, and sniffed the duck. He then looked up at the vet with sad eyes and shook his head. The vet patted the dog on the head and took it out of the room. A few minutes later, he returned with a cat. The cat jumped on the table and also delicately sniffed the bird from head to foot. The cat sat back on its haunches, shook his head, mewed softly, and left the room. The vet looked at the woman and said, "I'm sorry, but as I said, this is most definitely 100% certifiably a dead duck." The vet turned to his computer, hit a few keys, produced a bill, which he handed to the woman. The duck's owner, still in shock, took the bill. $150? $150 just to tell me my duck is dead? The vet shrugged. "I'm sorry. If you had just taken my word for it, the bill would have been $20. But with the lab report and the CAT scan, it's now $150. At least you didn't groan. The reality that's in front of us, we so often refuse to accept or understand. The reality of relationships, the reality of the challenges in our lives, the reality of how we are engaging the world around us. And so often we want another assessment, another look-see. Psalm 19 is this remarkable story about an incredible creation. Millions, perhaps billions of galaxies, and the physics of making it all work. It's a story about the gift of the energy of the Creator, an energy that is limitless, extraordinary. And when we consider that energy, and when we gaze upon the heavens on a beautiful starry night, just taking the time to look up at that night sky, at the incredible number of planets and stars. And if you're in an especially good location where you don't have the kind of light pollution that we have in towns and cities. You can see that backside of the Milky Way, the cluster of stars, and they are bright and extraordinary. That same infinity exists inside us, says the psalmist. An infinity of feelings, understandings, an infinity of emotions, gifts, doubts, an infinity of God's energy. And that infinity is so opposite the enormity, because when we look inside us, we see the smallness so often compared to that extraordinary universe in which we live. Yet, the psalmist proclaims with an insight and a wisdom that is rare, God is aware of everything we think and feel. God is aware of the power of who we are and of what we be. God is aware of the incredible giftedness and what we might do with the energy God places in our being. In the middle of the Lenten season, it's important for us to consider the energy that drives our lives. The positive energy, the negative energy, and to discern anew what it means to be alive, to be embracing life with our whole being, and not to allow the forces that impact our lives everywhere we turn to turn us into reactors, reacting to everything that happens. I don't know how you embrace or handle your personal emotions, but one thing I've learned through the years is that I can't respond instantly. Because if I respond instantly, there is an edge that somehow exists inside me. I personally need time. I need an overnight to think about how I am going to respond to what's going on around me. Probably a psychiatrist or a psychologist would tell you that has something to do with the way I was raised or conditioned as a child. I'm always impressed by people who are so able on the spur of the moment to do exactly the right thing. I, on the other hand, I have to think about it. I have to ponder it. Try to understand what my feelings are. I have to sort through them. And inevitably, I'll reach the conclusion. It just takes me a while. God's intention for every one of us is that we be empowered to share the gifts that God has placed inside us. And for those of us now who are reading vignettes about the life of Mother Teresa in our study, I think the challenge for every one of us is to keep from feeling too much guilt. Because what we read about the sacrificial